Hello and welcome to the Back Row Noise podcast, where if you're listening, we appreciate it. And if you're not, hey, you're not missing that much. I'm your host, Joe.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Joseph.
And today we are going to be talking about Marvel, the MCU's newest movie, The Eternals. Very long anticipated, very long awaited. This is the Marvel property that everyone was looking forward to, everyone's top pick, and yeah, nobody was looking forward to this. Nobody was looking for this movie. This was not something that people are like, the Eternals is the story that we care about.
Guys, you don't get it. It's the new Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, the difference is Guardians actually worked.
Right. That is actually the best juxtaposition, I think, right? Because Guardians I knew nothing about Guardians going into Guardians. And I knew nothing about Eternals going in. I knew basically the same amount about these going into them. Guardians actually works.
It shouldn't have, but it worked so well.
Well, Guardians is kind of in the same area as like Venom, right? Because Venom is a thing that shouldn't work, but it's funny because it's weird. It's just that Guardians is actually good. And I enjoy Venom, but it's not good.
And good unironically.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, apologist, but it's true.
I mean, I enjoyed Venom. So
I did too.
I enjoyed Venom. I liked the Guardians of the Galaxy. I did not like Eternals. So I mean, those are our. What are your guys's? Before we get into spoilers, so what other thoughts do you guys have about the movie, just in general?
I mean, just to go super basic here before we get really in depth, they tried to, I'll just pull up my Letterboxd review. Basically, in an attempt to flesh out 10 characters in 2.5 hours, we get the 10 dullest characters in the MCU.
That's a good, good little opening point, because it's entirely true. And going back to like the Guardians of the Galaxy comparison, this is like the same in the sense that it's a zany, I don't know, movie based around characters in like this space setting, which I mean they're on Earth, but come from space, whatever.
Yeah.
But Guardians of the Galaxy is not a serious film, but it takes itself seriously. And The Eternals is a serious film that almost doesn't take itself very seriously. Or it's like it doesn't grant its... I don't know. It just... you're going to hear a lot of I don't knows in this episode, because it's just such a... I don't know. It's a befuddling movie. It's like, it's not awful. Like, it's not worse than like Thor: The Dark World, but it's not a lot better than the most mediocre things the MCU has to offer. It's like,
Well, there is one thing we'll get into where I think it is, compared to every other film, it is the weakest. I guess it's probably weakest in a couple things, but I mean, main thing I'm just going to say is it definitely is the weakest characters. The shallowest characters. Like I said, most shallow characters in the MCU. So before we get super deep into that, those basically been my thoughts, though.
Yeah. I think just we're comparing to Guardians of the Galaxy. There's 5 Guardians and there's 10 Eternals, right? Even Groot is a more fleshed out and nuanced character than any of these Eternals.
A tree.
Like a literal talking tree that can only say 3 words and says a 4th word in the end of the first movie. Like, who has a vocabulary of 3 to 4 words and is a literal walking, talking tree, is more nuanced than any of these characters, which is sad. So I did do a little bit, looking. I read over some of the initial Jack Kirby run of the Eternals comics that created these characters. A little bit of background there. Jack Kirby was originally writing for DC. And he created something called the New Gods, and then it got canceled, or he quit, or he moved over to start working for Marvel instead. And he basically wanted to have exactly the same thing as what the New Gods were in DC. And he tried to call it the Celestials at first, and then he tried to call it Return of the Gods, and then eventually they finally settled on Eternals, is what they called it. And it was basically the exact same concept, which is all of the gods, all of the things that we think of as mythological characters, like Zeus and Icarus and Gilgamesh and all of these characters from various mythologies are real people or were real people that lived. But the stories that we have about them as mythologies are some kind of like weird corruption or twisted version of the actual like story that actually happened. And then he basically, Jack Kirby basically created a comic series based around that idea that there were these gods that existed, and then something happened to them, and now they're coming back, and now they're becoming relevant again because bad things are happening. He created the idea of the Celestials, which are some divine, semi-divine-ish beings, because like they exist in the material world, but they're kind of semi-divine because they kind of create things. He created the idea of the Eternals. He created the idea of the Deviants. Interesting point. So in the movie, one of the things that happens is it's a big reveal that the Celestial created the Deviants.
Mhm.
Well, right in like the third panel of the first comic book, they show you how the Celestials created humans, the Deviants, and the Eternals at the same time. And so I was like, that's not a twist. If you know it, if you've read the first 3 pages of the Eternals comic book, you understand that the Celestials created the Deviants. So that's just one of the dumb things. I don't know. I don't know if you guys had known anything about Eternals other than what I just said.
Going into it now.
No, but even then, I could see from like, I don't know, a little bit away. It's like, oh yeah, these things, these deviants, they look like, I don't know, they look like big space lizard monsters. It's like, okay, either some other celestial, made them and threw them at Earth or something, or we've got an obvious twist coming.
Yeah. Also, it is interesting because in the original ones, they were a sentient race. The Deviants are a sentient race of creatures that they don't look human because they're like corrupted or twisted or evil versions of people or something like that. So every time they're born, they come out looking like weirdly deformed and alien, but they're just like, they're a sister species to humans, and the Eternals are a sister species to humans as well. So they're all related to each other. It's just that these ones are all twisted and weird. So they're not supposed to be these like horrible like wolfy cat predatory looking things, because they kind of look like a cross between like a wolf or a horse or a bunch of other quadrupedal animals all mixed together. They're like generic beast creature basically. That's not originally what they were. They were supposed to be like humanoids, just weird looking humanoids. But as in things that I found in like 15 minutes of research about this movie. Another interesting tidbit is that, surprise, surprise, literally every single run of the Eternals was canceled. I think there was one. I think there was a Neil Gaiman run that actually finished. And there is a current ongoing series, I believe, probably because of this movie. They're like, we need to get something out there.
Probably.
But like the first run was canceled, and it left a bunch of plot points unresolved, and they had to resolve them later on by retconning in a relationship between the Eternals and Thor, and they resolved the plot points in the Thor comic because they couldn't get funding for another Eternals run. And there's a couple other miniseries that were canceled. So, it's pretty much within the expected ballpark of Eternals for it to be kind of mediocre.
Yeah, and not go over well with audiences.
Yeah,
no shade on Jack Kirby, of course, but again, it's Jack. I'm stealing your thing. It really is just a half-baked Justice League.
Yeah. Yep. Well, so now we've beat around the bush as much as possible. I guess you want me to give. I'll give a review of not a review. I'll give an overview of the plot so that you guys, so everyone else could save themselves the trouble of having to go and watch this movie. I'll just give you all of the important things. We start off with a garbage creation myth. We start off with like a really
spoiler warning.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. This is your. We start off with text scrolling up the screen in a butchered version of a creation story where the Celestials made everything, and then there's evil deviants that came from somewhere, and the Celestials created the Eternals to go fight them because of reasons. And then some of the Eternals are sent to Earth, and then you get a little bit of the Eternals fighting deviants in like pre-civilization times, and then you'll keep flashing back to the past, but progressing through time. You know, you'll go to like they're in Babylon and they've established the city of Babylon, and they're basically ruling as god kings. And there's cuts to, well, some of them get married in ancient India. Like 2 of them get married in ancient India, so there's a cut back to that, and you keep getting cutbacks to things that they were doing. I think the last one of those is a cutback to them at the fall of the Aztec Empire, fighting deviants that happen to also be there while the conquistadors are taking over the Aztec Empire, because you know these things just happen to happen at the same time. And then the Eternals decide to split up and go their separate ways because they killed the last of the deviants, so they're just going to live out on Earth as immortal people doing their own thing. But then you also get the actual plot of the movie, which is I guess the main character, the main Eternal character that we're following is Cersei. And she is a teacher. She has a human boyfriend who is Jon Snow. He's played by Kit Harington, so he's just Jon Snow. I don't remember the character's name. And then a deviant attacks because, oh no, they weren't actually all dead. And then they have to start teaming up. They have to go find each other. And that part of them finding each other takes up 2/3 of the movie, of them going and tracking down all of the people that had been separated. And then as you do, you keep getting flashbacks to what those people had been doing. So you find out that there's a guy who can control minds, and he hates that humans are fighting with each other. And so he went and he started a commune in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, and they have to go to the Amazon rainforest and find him. And there is a guy who can shoot laser beams out of his hands, and he became a Bollywood actor, but he became like a multi-generational Bollywood actor. Like he is his own great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather and grandfather and father and himself.
Because Eternals can't age, by the way.
Yes, well, yeah, Eternals,
really,
right? It's in the name.
Yes, the most creative use of that concept in the film. It's like,
yeah,
how is that the best thing about this? A person not aging. It's like, come on.
Yeah. And then you find one of them who has magic dementia, where you find she's lived so many lives that like she's starting to have, her memories are bleeding over into each other, and it's causing her to act out, and she has to be kept under constant watch, which sometimes comes into play and then sometimes doesn't in the finale. And you also find that the leader was killed supposedly by a deviant, but then you find out that actually there's the twist, which isn't a twist. The twist is that the Celestials are actually basically evil, because they created the deviants, released them onto the planets to kill off like dinosaurs and things like that, so that sentient life could rise up. But then the deviants evolved out of their control, and so they created the Eternals to kill them instead. You know, instead of just taking care of problems themselves, they just keep creating things. They keep creating semi-sentient things that can go out and kill problems for them. And then these things keep developing new problems for them because of that, because they don't know how to handle things. Because obviously what happens is the Eternals learn that the Celestials sent them to kill deviants because the Earth is actually a baby Celestial, and it's going to hatch and kill everyone on Earth. And the Eternals like, well, we have to save everyone on Earth because we love them. Because, you know, we spent the last 7,000 years watching them murder each other, and we don't form any personal attachments with anyone because their lifespans are basically nothing compared to ours, except for the one main character who's in love with a human, who's in love with Jon Snow. Which,
but you
okay,
don't
fair.
Understand? We saw them dream and hope and buzzword.
Yeah, right. And so just like the Deviants turned on the Celestials and became a problem, the Eternals turned on the Celestials and become a problem, and they stopped the Celestial from hatching by accident, by doing something that should have also destroyed the Earth. Cersei has the ability to transform things into other things, and so she turns the Celestial into a giant block of ice. But it's a thing that's like the size of the Earth inside of the Earth and is now a giant block of ice inside of the Earth, which would just kill everyone. Congratulations, you haven't solved the problem. But hooray, the day is saved. And then Cersei goes back to Kit Harington, and he's like, "Oh, I have a secret backstory that is maybe relevant if this movie does well."
In the
And
last 5 minutes of the
Yeah.
movie.
In the last 5 minutes of the movie. And then the Celestial who commands them, who's like in charge of the Eternals, shows up, and he's like, guys, did you think I wasn't going to find out? And then steals them, and then there's some of them were left over because they were on a spaceship, and then maybe you get Eternals 2, where they have to go and save their friends.
Starring
Which
may-
Harry Styles.
Which may have a Harry Styles soundtrack, which would
Which
be pretty
may-
fun.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
because
would
Harry
rather
Styles
be
is one of the
Beatles.
yeah. It's yeah. That's the movie, right? That's it. I just saved you 2.5 hours of your life.
So in case Joe wasn't clear, if you're going to see this at all, Redbox it or Disney Plus it when it comes out if you want to see it that badly. But aside from that, it is not worth your money.
Yeah. Make your
Yeah.
own popcorn.
Make your own popcorn. Watch it where you can like pause it and go do something interesting, like
Like what you
color.
do with the show.
Yeah.
Go do something like pause it so you can take breaks and like so your brain
Go-
doesn't ooze out.
What is it? Go look at, I don't know, maybe even half of this principal cast. Like, go watch one of their movies. You can watch Train to Busan, which starred the dude himself, Don Lee. I'm just going to call him Don Lee because that's his Americanized name. And if I try to pronounce his actual name, I'm just going to get, what is it? Going to get struck down because I would butcher it. But yeah, there's a lot of wasted, I don't know, a lot of wasted potential by the fact that just none of them get enough attention to do anything.
Yeah, yeah. We've got 10 characters. You know, the reason that the Avengers worked is that we had each of these characters either had their own solo movie or they were the main secondary character in someone else's solo movie. Like Black Widow didn't get her own movie before Avengers came out, but she was very prominently featured in Iron Man 2.
The only one who wasn't was Hawkeye.
Right, and hey, spoiler alert: Hawkeye is the one who has the lead, is like kind of sidelined as a half pseudo villain for most of Avengers. So, it's a big surprise there. But
Yeah.
the reason Avengers work is you get all of these characters get to interact, get to be established, and then you see them interact, and you're like, I know how this character behaves, and now I get to see how they interact with this other character who I know how they behave. But in this movie, you have to both establish who these characters are and have them interact with each other in interesting ways. And they failed on both of those counts. They didn't. Some of the characters you kind of get a sense of who they are, but in a very much one-dimensional single character traits, or with the exception, like Icarus has 2 character traits, which is he believes in the mission. He actually knows that the Celestials are killing all of the sentient races by hatching out of sentient life planets, and he's going along with it anyway. So you're like, oh, this guy is just a terrible person. But he also loves one of the Eternals. So that makes him a nuanced and complex character. He
Sure.
loves one of the people who's on the good guy team. So that makes him a nuanced and interesting character. Because he has 2 character traits as opposed to just one.
Protocol 2.
Before we keep
Well,
trashing on the film, do we have any positives at all?
Visual effects are pretty cool, but that's kind of a given. You throw
Yeah.
enough money at it and it works.
The only positive I can think of is I did think Kingo, who's the Bollywood guy, I did think he was not a great character, but I thought the scenes he was very funny, and his cameraman Karun, I thought they were funny, and the takes they did. Like, I still think the funniest line from the entire film was when they go to visit, I think, Druig in his village, and Druig's asking him about what kind of content he makes, with like if he's directed any content. And I think he said like some internet content. He asked how many views. He says it's not about the views. I don't do it for the views.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
That stuck with me, especially since we are content creators now. That was relatable.
Yeah.
And we don't do it for the views because we're #humble. Am I right, guys?
Well,
Yep.
we're a podcast, so it's an audio only format. So of course we don't do it for the views. We do it for the listens.
Remember
That's
to
right.
slap that like button, guys. I mean,
Remember, hit follow, hit plus, hit subscribe, hit whatever that button is on whatever
just
format
so
you're
we
using.
can not do it for the views even more.
Yep, exactly.
And the thing is, what is it? I can't even remember his name, and you just said it.
Kingo?
Kingo, yeah. Kingo. I feel like he might be the best out of the Eternals. Excuse me. Just because of the fact that he has some elements of depth. He's not just infatuated with another Eternal, or is taking care of another Eternal, or doesn't want to be an Eternal. He's like, all right, I'm an Eternal. I'm gonna live my life as a human in the human world, but I also know that my duty as an Eternal kind of takes over everything, which is kind of, I enjoyed that. That was a little different, not just, oh man, I love these humans. I'm gonna, completely, I don't know, throw everything away for them, even though I've seen them literally slaughter millions. Well, I guess at this point, like, billions throughout history. It's like, the only person that really has an effect on is Druig, which is kind of unrealistic in that fact. I say, well, Druig and Fastus. Well,
Faustus,
Mhm.
I think it's Faustus.
it kind of only has an effect on two of them, but then it's like, I don't know. I like the fact that he was able to uphold the mission, as it were, and I don't know, still have a good connection to the human world instead of just like completely isolating himself from the mission or from the human world or whatever.
Well, even though he does sort of isolate himself from the mission at the end there, he's like, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm with Icarus, but I'm not going to help him or help you. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
he
essential.
literally,
Goodbye.
he literally says at the end of the movie, you had to follow your heart. I followed my heart. And my response is, you didn't do anything. You left. You said, I disagree with you guys, but I'm not going to fight against you. Bye. And then he leaves, and then he disappears for like 30 minutes of the movie during
My
all
work
the
here is done, but you didn't do anything.
I know. Wash my hands of this. Walking out. I gotta go record another movie. What?
Hey, can you guys drop me off in what is it? Drop me off at my studio on the ship, because it's a long walk from Babylon back.
Yeah. Actually, if he's heading to India from Babylon, it'd be significantly shorter walk than if he's walking from America.
But,
So
hey, he's still got to walk, and so does his. What is it? So does his. What is it?
the cameraman,
chauffeur. Yeah,
valet,
cameraman.
yeah.
So
True,
we're
true.
in a desert. What do we do? I mean, I'm fine. I don't know what you're gonna do.
One thing that I think really hurt this film, it might be the only, if not, like, there may be like only one or two other films that have done this. There was not a single familiar face in the entire movie that we've seen in another MCU film or show, which I thought was interesting, because something that I think has helped a lot of the newer entries into the MCU is having familiar faces to help us sort of bridge that gap and help us. Even something like Captain Marvel, which was not great, still had Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, helping us almost warm up to the character more than we would if it was just her in the movie. And even something like Guardians, which I think Guardians, I don't know about Ant-Man if that had any familiar faces, but even Guardians, we saw Thanos. So we at least had that connection there. They make some mentions here and there with words, but even if it was just a side character they'd shown in here or something, it just feels very much like its own thing. And that doesn't help it, especially since it is supposed to be part of the bigger MCU. So seeing a character or something, whether it be a side character or main character, would have been helpful. But because of that, it kind of sticks out on its own. It all feels very contained. Even the final climax, we don't see a lot of effect from that, aside from them watching on a TV at the end. We don't really see, you'd think a giant thing coming out of the water that's going to destroy the entire Earth would have maybe some consequences to the world, but maybe after the Thanos snap, people don't care anymore about things that are this huge. So
yeah, it's like, oh look, a giant half continent just appeared in the middle of the ocean. Okay, but did half of the population of the universe die? No? Well, that's not that big a deal. That's Tuesday again, whatever. I'm sure that one of the other Avengers that is still hanging around will deal with it.
Right.
And again, if it wasn't established that like the stakes were still kind of relatively low, because with Shang-Chi, it's like, oh yeah, they're gonna the big evil thing's gonna get out and do that. It's like that was kind of a, I don't know, that was a Avengers the movie kind of level threat. This is like, this is the giant celestial breaking out of the earth, and you know, the end of life that only a certain team can stop. It's like that is Infinity War.
Yeah.
That's
You know what?
that, it's just the stakes are kind of all over the place.
Oh, yeah, this would have actually, because we know 100%, we know that they're not going to lose, because we know that Spider-Man No Way Home takes place in the same universe and is coming out in like 2 months or a month. Actually, it's
Yeah,
like
a month.
a month now. It's coming out on Earth, the planet that they're threatening to destroy.
But guys, if we pull down the timeline board, all right, ignore the red tape again. All right, you
Okay.
see, this takes place 3 months, and then you know this.
Yeah, it says in the movie present day, so we're supposed to
No,
assume that it's
no,
happening
no.
concurrently with now.
It happened yesterday, actually.
It contradicts my theories, so it's wrong.
So we know that the stakes are not real. We know, like, if the next 3 Marvel movies were all scheduled to be space-related movies, then we might believe, oh, the reason they're all scheduled to be space-related movies is because Earth is going to might actually be destroyed, and so this is a legitimate threat, and then we're going to have to deal with the Marvel universe as a universe as opposed to being Earth-centric. But we know that's not the case here. What would have been a much cleaner story, they set something up, and it doesn't pay off satisfyingly at all. They set up that there's one of these deviants, because they can evolve and they can mutate and they can change. And they're different from the Eternals, because the Eternals are actually robots. They're sentient robots. That's something else that they find out, by the way. We didn't mention it earlier because whatever. But the deviants are like evolving and changing. Yeah, right. And one of them has gained the ability to steal powers from people. And so it steals one of the Eternals' powers, its power to heal itself. Of course, which is the most convenient one to get, because that means you can't die. And then from there, it's getting more powerful. It's gaining strength as it's stealing power from the other Eternals, and also it's becoming more of a person. So the question of, can we just wholesale slaughter them, is becoming more of an issue. Like, this is actually a person now, basically. And that would have been much more interesting, and that would have been a much more believable finale, because now you're fighting something that's human scale, right? It's powerful, but it's human scale, and it's not the end of the world, but it would it could conceivably
be the Eternals.
Right. It could win in a way that is conceivably valid within the universe, that has implications. Good grief. It has problems that ripple down through the timeline, but it's something that could actually happen. Whereas we know the Earth isn't going to get destroyed. And so the word to describe this movie is it's a mess, because it's got too many plot lines, it's got too many characters, it's got too many problems, and none of them are satisfactorily wrapped up. So it's a mess. So
too many things it's trying to set up for the future too. I'm getting annoyed by kind of the MCU at this point. Like, before, it was like, okay, we're building up to this big end point. Okay, we made it to the end point. It's now you're giving me 20 minutes of build up for a sequel I'm not going to watch. You're giving me, what is it, a 5-minute end credit scene for a character I don't care about, for another movie I don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about Black Knight. I'm talking about Harry Styles and his darn
Eros, I think, is the name of that character.
Yeah, which has got that character's got a lot of history too. That, again, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Who knows who Eros is?
I mean, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why, I mean, just to go back to Venom, I thought Let There Be Carnage was slightly better, even though the film was pretty meh. And I don't think it was as Oscar-worthy as Joe does. Even compared to that film, it still gave us a really good end credit scene. Whereas this film, it couldn't even get us a good end credit scene, because it thought we liked the film so much. It gave us 2 film end credit scenes that only relate to the movie, that only relate into that universe and those characters. So that was kind of a bummer. But what's interesting is I like your idea, Joe, about the being becoming more sentient. I think that would have made it better, but something I think would have been even simpler to do and wouldn't have made the film great, but at least would have made it, better than it was, would be to have half of the Eternals. I don't know how many there were in the comics, but having 10 Eternals I think was a huge mistake because you can't flesh out that many in a movie. If you were going to have 10, you really want to stick with 10, should have been a Disney Plus show. But if you wanted, if you wanted this to be a movie, you should have had 5. I mean, maybe 6. Instead of just having Ajax be killed off by a deviant, have maybe half them killed off. Then you get this really powerful one that in the process becomes even more and more sentient because it's absorbing more and more. And then you have 5 that you can really focus on and take some of the traits. You can either have the deviant absorb the abilities, or you can just have that some of them got killed off and combine some of the traits and archetypes from these other characters into one character. Have 2 or 3 of those archetypes be in one character and have them be more interesting and have us focus on those characters more. But instead, we get these characters that, I mean, I wasn't attached to any of them at all. Then I did remember they are all basically robots, so maybe that was intentional. But yeah, I wasn't attached to any of them because they used way too many. I mean, something like Guardians, there were 5 characters, and it was about the same amount of runtime, but we were able to stick with them and at least care about the characters. I feel like if they had only focused on 5 characters, we would have had a much better film. If they changed that one thing, that would have greatly improved the likability of these characters and our attachment to them.
Especially because some of them have redundant powers. So if you there's like Icarus can shoot laser beams out of his eyes, excuse me, and then there's the guy who can shoot like energy projectiles out of his hands. Those powers aren't distinct enough to be like relevant.
Right.
Like the characters I understand are different, but like the powers aren't distinct. And there's another guy who can I think it's Gilgamesh, who can he can't shoot things, but he can make he can fists
punch
hard. That he punches hard with.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. But how is that different from the guy who could shoot projectiles out of his hands?
How is he different from Angelina Jolie's, who can make? How is he better than Angelina Jolie's character, who can probably make gold knuckles or whatever?
Right. Which is why what would have been more interesting is because I think how they had it set up is like basically you have 5 characters who are powerful and 5 who are more like smart and more, their powers are more
classes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so instead of having, those 2 separate, have 5 characters, each one of them has something powerful and something smart about them. And then you can even have it where Icarus turns bad. But then you still have those 4 and we still stick with them. And I mean, I guess you can still have Sprite want to become human. That's fine. But then you still have 3 and you can stick with those 3 and those 3 can go on adventures and stuff. They can still go to find other deviants or Eternals or whatever. But I really think in the process of trying to do 10 characters, there were little things that could have been interesting. They could have explored more, but because they had to focus on 10, we didn't really get to focus on any of them. And we just got sort of archetypes for all of them. So.
Yeah. There's an easy example of Angelina Jolie's character. I think Athena. She's supposed to be the goddess Athena, but she's like the real version of that. Her whole problem is that she has magic dementia, but I don't know anything about this person before that.
Right.
So I can't feel bad for her because I don't know who she was as a character before. So like if Iron Man gets magic dementia, I care because I actually know who Iron Man is, and I care about Iron Man as a character, and I care if he suffers, but I don't care about Theta. Like, who is she?
As I say, I think there's a line in there. It's like, and again, other than a couple like passing glances towards Gilgamesh, he's like her battle buddy or whatever. It's like, but if you erase her to reset her, you'll get rid of everything that makes Thena Thena. It's like, okay, what makes Thena Thena? She'll still be able to make the magic knives. Will she be as dry as she usually is?
Yeah, the only thing that she could do that's cool is she could make magic glowing spears and shields and stuff. She can still do that if she doesn't know who she is. That's it. The whole that. Well, actually, a problem in the movie is that the Eternals are used to clear out deviants, and then they facilitate the awakening of a new Celestial, and then they come back and they get their memories wiped and they go out on another mission. So like an important point is that they have their memories wiped and they're trying to like they want there's a undercurrent of they want to maintain their original personalities or maintain who they are now, but like they aren't anyone now. So who cares if we lose them?
Right. Obviously, they think they're someone now, but yeah, we obviously
Right,
know
but we
they're
don't.
not.
We don't care.
Yeah.
Instead
Right.
of seeing that they are someone, we're told that they are someone.
Yes.
That's you
Yes,
know
that
again
is it.
that's a it's I feel like that's almost a cliche at this point to in a, like I don't know critical review to say that, but it's like oh yeah it the only thing I got out of like uh development wise is like what is it again Cujo 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 having his
Kingu?
King oh yeah Kingu having his life the lifelong things, oh yeah, that's my great granddad, that's my granddad, like that kind of showed a little bit of like a little bit outside of his initial characterization is just like I don't know the magic space gun guy who was kind of funny, and it's like okay, that showed a little development there. And then Gilgamesh becoming like the kind of essentially the housekeeper and like the for and taking care of Athena. That's like that's a little something that's shown, and Athena kind of stops at when she loses her mind. It's like, oh yeah, why is she seeing Erishim, yada yada, all that stuff. But then everything else is just like, I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, Cersei's got the, I don't know, she's got a job as a teacher or something.
Yeah,
I think
she likes people, so she wants to help people more. So she's a teacher now.
Hey, you've loved these people since you first came here. It's like, okay, why? You're a robot.
Yeah, right.
I think the most unbelievable part about this movie is that you have Gilgamesh goes to take care of Angelina Jolie for like centuries, and they don't become a couple. The whole reason Gilgamesh would take her away is so there would be no competition, and she would be forced to be in a relationship with him, and he doesn't take advantage of that over hundreds of or thousands of years. I'm like, okay, clearly he must have the mind of a robot then if he's not thinking about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Come to think of it, is like the other thing of like it would be more interesting if they didn't have personalities at first, like in the past, instead of like I don't know. The first thing Cersei says when she looks at Earth is like, "Oh, it's beautiful." It's like you're a robot with no memories and a programmed purpose. Do you even know what beauty is? And then staying on Earth gets them to develop these personalities. And then Icarus isn't quite right because he never really did. Then he turns into the villain or something, and I feel like that was one of the ideas that kind of got chopped up and mixed in with the other stuff. Like another good comparison for this movie is a film salad, because there's a lot of things that are in there together that are not very homogenous. That just make it I don't know. Oh, there it is. It's got a bunch of different things in it. I had it and wasn't very filling, and I'm gonna move on to something that's a little more substantial. And yeah.
I think that's a good distinction. Is the Guardians of the Galaxy is a film soup, and this is a film salad. In a soup, everything is mixed together, but the flavor, like there are the distinct pieces. You have the chunks of meat and you have the chunks of potato or carrots or whatever, but like it all kind of it mixes together and makes a whole. Whereas a salad is here's a bunch of pieces and you can just pick pieces out, and if you like those pieces, you pick them out and you eat those, and you can leave the leaves behind if you don't want them. And like none of it adds together to anything really. It's just a bunch of stuff there, and you're like, oh well, can I have my steak now? Oh, this was it. Oh.
0 stars.
I'm just gonna go somewhere else now.
0 turtles.
Yeah, this is. Yeah,
this is not a -5 experience. This is just a +1 experience.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but one thing. Sorry, what did you say, Joe?
No, go ahead, because I was going to go on a rant. So you go first.
Oh, he's doing it.
I'm ranting first. No, what I thought would have been interesting would have been kind of adding on to what Joseph was saying, just a way to make the plot more interesting would have been, instead of them thinking they're celestial beings and they're actually robots, it would have been interesting if they've been implanted with false memories to think they were robots and they couldn't connect with humanity. But really they were actually like humans or had some sort of connection with humanity that was taken away from them by Asterim, and maybe even something like the Deviants created them and they were some sort of organic being, just something less obvious.
Or there are
And
deviants
that would have
evolve
explained
to become
their love for
humans.
humanity, almost.
Yeah. Yeah, you need something that connects them back to humans,
Right.
other than just them maybe having a personality trait.
Right. Yeah. So they really didn't give us that. So if they had
Yeah.
added something like that, it would have been interesting. Because I feel like the concept of Eternals is more interesting than the execution of Eternals in this
Very
film.
much.
Yeah.
So this is what I was going to rant around. Is I really like the idea, because one of the things that this is a movie that the pitch for this movie should be tailor designed to be something that I like, and this is why I'm so angry with the movie. Like,
Right.
other people are, it's meh. I am upset with the movie because it's the pitch that I would like. Because the pitch of the movie is, hey, you know how there's all these myths and legends in human history about famous and extraordinary people doing famous and extraordinary things? What if that's actually true, but those stories have been distorted? And there's a group of people that are functionally immortal. Like they could be killed if you hit them hard enough, but they're ageless. That have beyond normal human abilities, that have been doing things in the background for a certain amount of time for whatever reason. I love that idea. I think I love stories like that. I love that kind of, the all myths are true, or all myths have a kernel of truth kind of thing. And also, I can't give the MCU credit for this, because they're obviously stealing characters they're taking the characters from the Jack Kirby comics. So I'll give Jack Kirby the credit for this. All of those names are famous characters from mythology. Gilgamesh, I think most people probably know, is from Mesopotamian story. Icarus is very famous, well known. Circe is a witch in Greek mythology. Even Ajax is a famous king. I don't know if he's a king or a prince. I can't remember. There's actually an Ajax the Greater and an Ajax the Lesser, who are Greek heroes that fight in the
Lesser
Trojan
one
War.
is the one named after soap.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are actual Greek heroes. What's Sprite? Sprite is based off of Celtic mythology. She's basically a pixie. That's what she's supposed to be. I think a sprite is a type of pixie, or pixie is a type of sprite. They're both types of fairies, something like that. Even I think Druid is supposed to be like druid. I think that might be where it's coming from. Something related to that. And the other ones, I can't remember the names of all the other ones, but I'm sure that if I were to look, Athena, that's an easy one. That's
Right.
Athena, right? So, like, she literally talks about that one in the movie, is how her actual name is Athena. And if you look at the history of Eternals, Kronos or Uranus or Zeus, or those are other characters that are members of the Eternals, like, broader cast, and those are all other people that you know of in mythology, or they're kind of like twisted up versions. So that idea, I love that idea. That's right up my alley. And then they just butchered it. They just made it terrible. It was just like the worst version of it that you could think of doing. And that's why I hate it so much.
Yeah. What's interesting is you have this, the director, I want to say her name correctly. I think it's Chloe Zhao. She was last year's both Best Director and Best Picture winner. So you'd think hiring her on for the newest MCU film would be a match made in heaven. It would be one of the best MCU films. But what happens is, you think it'd be one of the most ambitious, but what happens is that an attempt to be ambitious, because I can almost guarantee you she probably had a good story in mind. I would assume, just from what I've heard from her previous films, I'm sure it was a good one that maybe asked some good questions and really focused on, or tried to focus on, the humanity of these heroes or their connection with it or whatever. But they're also locked into the MCU's film formula. They did not mesh well and gave us a very dull MCU film, which, with that in mind, made me go back and think about the recent MCU films we've gotten, and just the whole thing about the MCU film formula, and just how films are starting to look so similar. And the main thing holding them together have been the characters. And while the characters are good, To quote Norman Osborn, I feel like the MCU needs to go back to formula.
Back to formula.
and and either work to change it up, and since they've done it long enough now where it is becoming dull, and as they've clearly shown with Eternals, it does not work as well anymore, and the films aren't hooking people as well, in my opinion, or at least hasn't hooked me as well, because we've got some cool scenes, cool characters, but they haven't been great, and the stories have they've been using the same formula over and over again. So they need to either change it up or just drop the formula altogether and allow directors to create the films in the MCU they want to make, while also, making sure they fit in the MCU canon. But I feel like you can do that very easily and still creating the film that you want to make.
I feel like getting rid of some of the more obvious MCU-isms, like, again, Icarus shouldn't be quipping. And I don't know, stuff like that, because he's an incredibly disconnected, almost inhuman, not that inhuman, the real definition of inhuman character. It's like, even if you get rid of that, or get rid of any other little connections, like, stuff like that, or it's like, yeah, we got to insert this joke here to break the scene and completely take you out of the movie. It's like, even if you get rid of that, I feel like this film would have improved a little, but it would have. I don't think it would have gotten off the ground.
I think probably Joe's favorite scene was when Icarus flies too close to the sun and literally flies into the sun. Being the mythological fan that he is, I'm sure that was his favorite part.
Except for that whole entire time, I was thinking this character isn't actually dead. Like he flies into the sun.
Subtlety and nuance of a palm, was it a cup of coffee?
Yeah. He literally flies into the sun to kill himself because he feels bad about almost killing the girl that he kind of loves. Except we know he's not dead. He's comic book dead. He's Schrödinger dead. He's only dead if they decide they don't want to bring the character back. If they decide that they want to bring the character back, you find out, he's so powerful, flying into the sun couldn't kill him.
It only made him stronger.
Yeah, he absorbed sunlight or something like Superman.
Yeah.
What's
funny is that, story of Icarus flying too close to the sun. That's what happened to Marvel with this movie.
Yep. I was thinking about this when I was thinking about this after the fact, and let's go all the way back to the very first movie, Iron Man, the movie that started off the MCU. And there's the iconic scene of Obadiah Stane yelling at the scientist, "Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps." But like, you could believe that Tony Stark, an above average intelligent person, could build an arc reactor in a cave with a box of scraps, because it's not something that a normal person could do, but it's something that a person could do.
Something that Tony Stark could do.
It's something that a person with
he's not Tony Stark.
That he's a character that you've proved. Yes, exactly. It's a character who we have shown. You get the little montage of him. You get demonstrations of the fact that he is a brilliant inventor. He already had built the repulsor tech, which is how the suit flies. All he needed was a battery. And so he figures out how to shrink a battery that already existed into something that's usable for the specific purpose. And then we cut so that's very much the real world, right? This is physics works normally. Reality is the way you normally would think of it being. It's just that there is a guy who is a brilliant inventor and happened to make a different kind of weapon that's used in a different kind of way. But it's understandable how that would work. And even with Captain America, he gets the super soldier serum, but that's something that like feels normal. It feels somewhat grounded. And then we go all the way to the Eternals, where it's like we got magic space alien angel things called Celestials that actually they created everything because they create the sun or some nonsense, and they made weird magic predator creatures, and then they made weird magic robots to hunt the weird magic predator creatures, and all of human history is probably a lie because we have these intelligent beings that have lived the entirety of human civilization guiding us. It's like, okay, I just don't care. Go away. Stop.
Yeah,
That's-
and even like the first little taste of the Celestials we got was like the one that blew up that planet in Guardians of the Galaxy, like with the Power Stone. And it's like, wow, that's I feel like that's what the Celestial should have been. Just little hints and nods, and maybe,
Mhm.
I don't know, the first shot we get of Arisim as like, this far off being, like, this mission control for the Eternals. Maybe that's all we needed. But listen, they didn't go full weird, but they also didn't go full Iron Man. Which again,
Mhm.
in the scale of things, they just tried to balance between them, and
Yeah.
that just screams to this movie's like non-identity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. I think they didn't go full on anything. They tried to do too many things, and in the consequence of that being it was very dull and didn't do any of those things very well.
Yep.
And I got
Well,
one, oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Iron Man is fully grounded in reality, and then the characters, like Iron Man is a witty Tony Stark is a witty character.
Mhm.
This isn't grounded. It's only half kind of maybe grounded in reality, but not really at all. And some of the characters are just making a joke about the end of the world, but also trying to tell you to take it seriously. So that's, yeah, good.
Yep. And again, like characters that shouldn't be quipping, they are. It's stuff like
Yep.
that. Beating that dead horse one more time. I don't like the quips anymore. I don't
Mhm.
like the Wheaton-esque dialogue. He's
Mhm.
he's made an irreversible mark on this thing because it worked once. Everyone else is trying to do it now.
Mhm.
And there's just one more thing. I guess we're going into MCU connections, but I'm guessing, was it this kind of is just on the production of the MCU now as a whole? It's like, I don't know. They felt like they were this movie feels very disjointed from a production standpoint because, like we said, there's these half-baked ideas of like, oh, the Eternals didn't have a personality, they didn't have memories until they came, and humanity made them what they are now, and there's stuff like that. And then there's like, oh yeah, and then there's also this deviant that evolves, and then there's this other thing, and like all these plot lines and these ideas. It's almost like, I don't know, you had five different people at the helm, and
Mhm.
they wanted to make a very complex film, and it's not that audiences can't handle a complex film. I mean, what is it? Dune is the success that it is, and again, hopping on Dune again, gotta love Dune. It's all about Dune, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like audiences can handle complex films, but they tried to be a complex film. The Eternals tried to be a complex film, but then it just felt like, oh, we're getting a little too complex for these what is it, moviegoers. And you could tell Sprite became what is it, surrogate exposition machine, other than the literal exposition machine that is Arisim. And
Mhm.
it's like, there's the little things. It's like, the first thing I noticed was when they first get ambushed by the super deviant or whatever in London, and it's like, one of the first things she says is, "Whoa, is that a deviant?" It's like, listen, we just got done seeing the deviants getting like obliterated. We know what they look like. You know what they look
You,
like. You don't need to say that. And
you
then
spent you spent 7,000 years fighting these things. You know what they look like. Stop it.
exactly, that's just for the audience. And even then, the audience just saw them on screen with their
Mhm.
eyes. And then afterwards, it's like it shows, like, it shows itself healing its arm. And then Sprite says, "Whoa, it's healing itself." And then 5 minutes later, when they're at that like farmhouse, it's like, it was healing itself. It must have taken such and such as powers. It's like, oh, do you think I'm five? You think I'm five? What is this? Do you think I have the attention span of a gnat?
Well, you have to remember, basically, Sprite is 5, and she's
5,000.
she's
Still.
looked 5 for thousands of years.
No, but
she's
still,
been a
we know why
12-year-old
they're
girl.
doing that.
Well, here compared to Dune, because you brought it up, Dune is a narrow, deep movie, and so the complexity is going down into the depths of understanding things. This is a wide, shallow movie, And so the complexity is a bunch of stuff just connecting back and forth on the surface without actually going down into anything interesting. So it's got a lot of stuff happening, but none of the stuff is fully thought out or interesting or really like articulated well. It's just a bunch of stuff happening. So as opposed to Dune, where it has depth to it and it all connects down in a vertical way that's very satisfying and very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why Dune is better than Eternals. All right, guys.
I mean, that was not in doubt. That was not a question.
That was never a question.
Dune is better than Eternals. Please do it. I'll send you $5. I don't know.
I guess we got to rank this on the Eternal scale now, don't we?
Yeah,
No.
I'm gonna give it 3 half-baked characters out of 10.
No.
That's where I'm putting this.
Now, as much as I didn't like the movie, I thought it was a very meh. And though I'm not as upset about it as Joe, which is completely valid. I don't know. Four Eternals out of 10. The 4 I liked. Was it Gilgamesh, Athena, Fastus, and was it Cersei? And that's all.
Okay.
The more I think about it, the less I like it. So this rating might go down. But just I'm kind of going right in the middle, just because when I think about it, it's not like it's complete trash. It had things that were fine, but it also had very little to nothing that stuck out. So it's kind of right there in the middle with I'm just gonna give it 5 Eternals. So
okay.
But which 5? No, I'm kidding.
Just 5.
Which 5?
Just to clarify, for me, a 5 is a movie that does. It's kind of what you said. A 5 is perfectly functional. You watched it. There's nothing offensive. There's nothing that stuck out. There's nothing that made you think. Anything below that is it had to be doing stuff actively wrong, and so it's losing points from being perfectly functional.
Oh shoot! I gotta give this a 4 now. It did things actively wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
And I really
go
like the
down to
concept,
2
and it screwed up the concept, which is why it gets a 3 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're going by wasted potential alone, this thing's like a 2 or something. But
all right, there we go.
Just critical, critical stuff. I don't know. I'm still at a 4.
I think the only reason I would give it 5 Eternals is because this movie would have been so much better if it had only 5 Eternals in it.
Fair enough. Well, it would have been even better if there was only 4. So.
Heyo. And just one more thing, sir. Just one more thing.
Oh yes.
Let's see. This was the first introduction to the MCU's supernatural side, and wow, I don't care. I am. A lot of people will know. Big fan of Ghost Rider, even the Nicolas Cage thing. Big fan of Ghost Rider as a character, and the team he's on times, the Midnight Suns in Marvel. It's got Blade, it's got Ghost Rider, it's got kind of the big hitters in the supernatural side of the Marvel universe. They're getting closer to getting their own show or their movie or whatever, and I just don't care. There's just too much happening right now, and it's I don't know. It's just too much crap.
Well, before we wrap up, I think because the people have asked for it, we need to give our review of The Thing as well, since we forgot that last week.
Oh, bonus review. Oh,
flashback to an actually good movie.
Let's end on a positive note here.
Yes. All right.
10 out of 10. Best movie ever. Okay, thank you. It really
I
is
would give
close
it
to a 9, but yeah, you know my opinions on The Thing. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10 just because I thought it was a very well done film. It's not the kind of film that I watch regularly. It's not really my kind of film, but for what it was and what it did, I thought it did a very good job at that. So I would definitely give it a solid 9.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not a horror movie fan. I'm much more of a Marvel fan. I'm much more of a superhero movie fan. I hated Eternals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like horror movies. I would rather watch The Thing again than watch Eternals. I would say The Thing was a 9.
9s across the board. Very nice.
9.
Very nice.
Yeah,
All
a nice respectable score.
Those of you who wanted that rating, I hope you were listening just then.
Yep. So just to recap, if you're thinking about going to watch Eternals, go watch The Thing and then waste an extra hour of your life afterwards. It'll be a much better
bring
use
your
of your time.
family to watch The Thing, just like you know,
Yeah.
it's what is it? They'll have more impact out of that than watching the Eternals.
Yep.
They're never gonna forget The Thing.
Yeah, you might forget the Eternals, or you're gonna wish you had.
Oh, I've forgotten a lot about the Eternals already, and we watched it last night.
Yeah, right. Well, we did. I had it in the schedule to do favorite and least favorite scenes, and we didn't even talk about them because.
Well, in the end, it's the scenes were kind of all character driven, and we talked about the characters, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, they're there, and again, Gilgamesh and Athena, like they tried to do. A lot of movies now are trying to do like dinner scenes to like it's like whoa, these guys they're sitting down having a meal. That's relatable. We can flush them out that way, and it works.
I
But
eat
it didn't
food
work
too.
here.
Yeah.
It didn't work here.
Well, any other last closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Okay,
Not
new
really.
title instead of Dune is better than Eternals. It's like Eternal Slumber. What's up, guys? It's your boys, the Triple J podcast with another review. It's like yeah. That's I'm vetoing whatever the title might be now with my 1/3 power. And yeah. We're doing it. We're going all the way. We're not doing this for the views, but we are doing this for the
listens.
Yeah, the listens.
Yep.
There we go.
All right. Well, this has been the Background Noise Podcast, reviewing and very much tearing apart Eternals. Don't watch it. Save yourself the time. Save yourself the money. Go watch something better. If you have been listening, we appreciate it. Thank you. If you haven't been listening, hey, you probably didn't miss out that much. And next time, what are we doing next time, guys?
We're doing Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2
Something strange will be going on
in your
Who are you
neighborhood.
gonna call?
No.
Da-na-na-na-na.
All right, yeah. If you've been listening, good stuff. Now get back to work.